Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd Podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. All right, there's never been a night quite like this. On Friday, November 15th, Netflix and Most Valuable Promotions bring you the highly anticipated boxing mega event of the year. Jake El Gallo Paul will go toe-to-toe in the ring against Iron Mike Tyson. For a long time, the baddest man on the planet. When a disruptor challenges a legend, anything can happen. Also, that night, a historic rematch between the Brave Bomber, Katie Taylor, and Amanda the Real Deal Serrano. The last time they met in the ring, history was made. Women's boxing was catapulted to new heights. Though these are the fights the world's been waiting for. Don't miss these epic showdowns. It is live from AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Watch Paul versus Tyson, Friday, November 15th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Live on Netflix. You can also follow the road to the fight by watching Countdown, Paul versus Tyson, a 3-part documentary series beginning November 12th, only on Netflix. Well, he's the longtime host of Let's Go with Bill Belichick, Peter King, and Max Crosby, multiple Emmy Award-winning broadcaster Jim Gray. And I thought I would start with this. I was very lucky out of college. I got a job in Las Vegas. You and I may have touched on this before. I covered Mike Tyson like right at the semi-beginning of his career, not in the Catskills, but his first foray into Las Vegas. Okay. And he was fascinating. He was pivoting from Cus D'Amato to Don King. John Horn, if I recall, was in his corner. It was a tumultuous, fascinating time. And I would go to his workouts at the top-ranked gym, which is not that far from my work, which is the NBC affiliate in Las Vegas. And again, at this point, Tyson was an enigma, fascinating. He was all things boxing. It was like nothing we'd seen. He was a hurricane. You followed him longer than I have. So what am I to make of this fight and his return?
Well, he just had a career unlike anything else, really, almost anything else in sports. When you consider, the youngest heavyweight champion, and you came in right with Rory Holloway and John Horn, and I guess, and Don King, and that was after Cus D'Amato and Jimmy Jacobs and Bill Caton and those guys who would, helped raise him in the boxing game. And if you just look at this path, there is no straight line. It has been a roller coaster, unlike anything that we've ever seen. It's all over the place, from great heights of tremendous greatness to depths of despair and destruction. And so when you say, this guy has not fought, he threw in the towel in the 7th round. Kevin McBride did that fight on Showtime. And before that, he had lost to Danny Williams, couldn't get off the canvas. So as far as a competitive fight, we're coming up on 19 years ago since that took place. Now, he fought very, very well. We did a fight with him in COVID, and I broadcast that fight. I believe I broadcast that fight with Mauro Ranallo and Snoop Dogg. This was before Snoop was a commentator everywhere for sports. He's obviously a very famous rapper and musician. And we did a fight in the Staples Center with about 20 people there against Roy Jones Jr. And Jake Paul was on that card. Jake Paul fought that night against Nate Robinson, the former slam dunk champion.
I watched it.
A little guy, but he could jump out of the building. You remember him, Colin? And he knocked him out. And that was kind of the birth. It was the first or second fight in his boxing career, a YouTube guy. And he knocked him out bad. And I didn't know Jake, and I was only supposed to do the post-fight interview for Tyson and for Roy Jones Jr. And they asked me to go up in the ring, and I just said to him, this man is hurt. This man needs medical attention. Don't be a jackass.
Yeah. Be
gracious. Don't be whatever it is that's made you famous. And he looked at me and he was really calm and he was very gracious. And he had the proper decorum. Got a text from him about 4 or 5 days later thanking me just for talking him, he wasn't off a ledge, but just for being, for trying to help him. But I don't know Jake. And now Mike Tyson, is facing a guy. When you say, how do you assess this? He's 58 years old. He's in fantastic shape. I mean, he's just been terrific. Now, he had a bad ulcer that caused cancellation of this fight and was hospitalized. And so, when you're at this age and you're getting hit in the stomach and you're trying to fight against a kid who's 31 years younger, anything can happen in here. And the guy's dedicated his life the last 4 or 5 years to try and be, a terrific boxer. He's not skilled. He's not of that ilk. He's not anything that anybody's going to ever say, uh-oh, in terms of professional fighter. But in terms of a boxer, his skills have improved. Now, having said that, on top of it, Colin, and I know this is long-winded, I don't think you want to get hit by Mike Tyson at any point in your life. I don't care when. I don't care how old he is. This guy is menacing, and he is in fantastic shape. And to get hit by him at any point, I've seen what he's been doing with his sparring partners.
Yeah, so have I.
Gloves, and it's menacing. Is he Iron Mike? No. Do you want to get hit by that ever? I don't care if you're 27, 17, or 57. No.
Will this look like Mike and Roy Jones Jr., which to me was disappointing because it was obvious Mike wasn't going to go full steam ahead. It was exhibition slash entertainment. Will this be similar or a real fight?
Well, it's sanctioned as a real fight in Texas. They have a license. So it's 2-minute rounds, 8 rounds, which is, the parameters that they've all agreed to. I thought for Mike, who was 54, I guess, at the time he fought Roy Jones Jr., I thought he looked sensational. He looked like a really high quality, old fighter.
Yeah.
And Roy Jones Jr., I believe, is doing the commentary on Netflix for this fight. Said it was like getting kicked in the stomach by a mule. Okay. So that guy's a professional fighter who had a lot of fights, who won belts in all kinds of divisions, and was terrific, going all the way back to when he was robbed in the Olympics in Seoul, Korea. So Roy Jones Jr. knows. So I kind of had the opposite feeling, not to be disagreeable with you. I kind of thought Mike and Roy put on a great performance in the middle of COVID that was interesting. It's not supposed to be what they were. So who is what they were? No, Mike Tyson isn't going to walk into the ring and just look at the guy and he's going to get knocked out. I don't believe that. I think that Jake Paul, if he's smart, he's probably going to try and avoid Mike Tyson for 4 or 5 rounds and see if he gets tired, and then see what happens. If he plays nice, it might be a nice exhibition. If he doesn't play nice, I think Mike's going to try and, knock him out.
Yeah, I always supported Jake Paul's venture because I thought it was a redeemable effort. I thought he was a young, tough kid. You could find him in any bar in the country, right? But he really put the work in. He really put the time in. Every time I watched him, he was better. And again, his learning curve was pretty severe, but he was better. And so I thought to myself, he's a big, tough guy. If a tough guy put in 3 years of commitment, well, he's obviously a successful kid, he and his brother. So, I mean, he's obviously knows how to build a brand. So he's a businessman. So my take has been, if he was fighting professional fighters, he wouldn't be a tomato can. He's just, because I think he's so committed. You and I covered everybody from Buster Douglas. We've seen a lot of these guys who don't train for big fights. That so much of boxing is taking the sweet science seriously and being dedicated and running every day. So I look at Jake Paul and I think, I don't know how gifted an athlete he is, but I think he can take a punch. I mean, the only thing I thought was avoid Mike for the first 2 rounds. That would be my strategy. If Mike punches himself out, anxiety, he's older. But I mean, do you think Jake Paul in the ring could hurt Tyson?
Of course, yes. And I don't diminish Jake Paul. I think that he has put in the work, and I think that he is dedicated to it. And I think that he's figured out a way that he can make money. He attracts an audience. And so I'm for it. A lot of people in boxing have not liked what Jake Paul has done because they think that he's taken opportunities away and that he has somehow demeaned the sport. I don't agree with that at all. I think that he's attracted new eyeballs to the sport, that he's gotten fans who would have never participated, never paid attention, and he's gotten them to pay attention to him. USA Boxing has put him on board. Don't know if that's good or bad or what that means, but they see something in him that can help the sport. And the sport, you don't want to say it's on life support because it can't kill itself. Right. They've tried. They've tried. And it always survives. And it always has an audience. And if you look back over the past 25 years, Colin, if you look at the highest paid athlete over the past 25 years, at the top of the list in many of those years, you're going to find a boxer, whether it was Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, or now Canelo Alvarez. making more than all these guys who play soccer, more than all these guys who play in the NFL and the NBA. And they don't have a single endorsement. So we're talking about all being earned on the field of play, in the ring in this instance. So boxing on its big nights still attracts a major audience, a worldwide major audience. So I think what Jake Paul is doing is attracting people who would not be watching the sport otherwise, because it's not mainstream, because
That's
pay-per-view
right.
television has taken over. HBO left the game, and that was very destructive for boxing because it took 150 to $200 million budget out of it. Now Showtime, where I was for 37 years, left boxing after 37 years, and the network closed down sports. And so there is another 150 million. When you take $300 million out of a sport that's in the United States, it's impossible. It's impossible for that to be replaced. And ESPN doesn't do it with Top Rank. They've gotten out. Fox has basically gotten out. Top Rank is still involved, but the fights are minimal on ESPN. And the Zone hasn't caught on in this country. So there is no outlet anymore. So the sport is suffering. And it's in peril for the 2028 Olympics here because the federation is in such disarray. So right now it's not on the docket. Hopefully that will get corrected. So what Jake Paul is doing is helping the sport. And people, I don't say people should get behind it because that's a personal choice, but fans of boxing should not be naysayers of Jake Paul.
Yeah, I don't think he's taking anything from anybody. He's adding value and adding cards and fights that didn't exist. I don't feel like he's taking, anybody's fights, right?
I see it that way, but a lot of people, unfortunately, in boxing, other promoters and some of the fighters who can't get cards, who can't get paydays, maybe they're looking at it with a bit of jealousy as well. But I admire what Jake Paul has been able to do. Look, the guy's in terms of building himself in a brand, and I'm not familiar with all of the antics that he does. When I say admire, what I say is he has built himself into somebody who was nothing. He took nothing and made it into something, and he's getting a whole lot of attention. I don't know exactly what he does or doesn't do on YouTube that attracts this attention because I'm not following him, and that's not my area of expertise or knowledge. But whatever he's done has put him in this point where he's able to go out and make a ton of money, and so God bless him. I applaud it.
Of Jake's many unique opponents, and I've watched, I think, almost all of his fights. Where does Mike rank? When we have to consider, let's contextualize it. The age is a factor, but of the fighters he's fought, where do you put the Tyson fight?
That's got to be on the top. None of these people are Mike Tyson. I don't care. Look at the guys he's fought. Can you name one? They're
Nate
MMA
Robinson.
guys. This isn't. No, these have been to get some experience, to cherry pick opponents, to be able to build and to crescendo to maybe something of this nature.
Yeah. Netflix foray into this is fascinating. So, the Amazon's like, we're doing it real. We're going NFL, we're going NBA. Netflix now is going into
And they
the
do
NFL.
our PBC fights, not to interrupt you, but they do PBC on Amazon. So we've had, Canelo twice and Tank Davis and so forth. Tim Tszyu.
Netflix did the NFL quarterback, NFL receiver, and they're doing the NFL. Is this, and I don't know if you have an answer to this, but is this the future? Events. I mean, I grew up and my first job out of college was Vegas. I went to Daredevil events. Jim, I love them. I've been to Evil Knievel. I've been to Robbie Knievel. No, maybe I haven't been to Evil. I've been to Robbie Knievel. I've been to a lot, it's, the Cirque du Soleil events, the stuff where it's people flying through the air. I love that stuff. Do you think this is the beginning of Netflix going in? We know they do documentaries and true crime and movies. We know what they do well. Will their sports department be front and center an event network, in your opinion?
Well, they also tried the thing with the Formula One. They had a golf tournament with Formula One in Las Vegas last year. So I think they're all testing the water. As you mentioned, they're going to have the Christmas games, football games. And, by the way, some of these twirling around things, they're not even events anymore. It's mainstream. Look at what goes on in the Olympics now. Breakdancing. Look at what Shaun White has done for years. None of this, when we were growing up, would have ever even been considered anything. You look at somebody on the mountain, and I grew up in Denver, so I was on a ski mountain, every week from when I was 4 years old on. You saw somebody doing something like this, and they were a freak of nature. Now it's what they do. It's mainstream. It's snowboarding. It's all of these things, skateboarding. So will they get into this? I think they're in the business of trying to attract eyeballs, and they have hundreds of millions of subscribers. And this fight will be watched by a ton of people because it's not pay-per-view. If you have a subscription to Netflix, you're going to get exposed. And who in their life, who's a sports fan, doesn't want to say that they saw Mike Tyson fight? And for all of this younger generation who didn't, who've been told by their fathers and their grandfathers about what a great sport boxing was and how this guy took everything by storm and how he was one of the most famous people on the planet, how he was the only guy who attracted an audience after Ali, even though Larry Holmes was a great fighter and there were a lot of great fighters, and we had Hagler and Hearns, but they were in different weight divisions and lower weight divisions. Here was a heavyweight champion who captivated the world. And then his life, was played out in front of Barbara Walters and Robin Givens and beating up Don King and going to jail and coming out of jail and fighting again and biting a guy's ear. I mean, just so much has happened. So Netflix says, this guy's a captivating character who's rebuilt himself, who has paid his debt to society, and who is in movies, and he's likable now, and he picked himself up, and he's better tomorrow than he was yesterday. And so I think that's the business that they're in. And if that's Mike Tyson and that's Jake Paul, and that can do it, great. If that's a roast with Tom Brady, great. If that is an NFL game, I think they're going to be involved. And by the way, the rights for this, for how many ever people they're going to get to watch this, is going to be a heck of a lot less in terms of what they have to pay for a heck of a lot more eyeballs than some garden variety NBA game on Thursday night.
I've thought that there'll be a George Foreman quality to Mike Tyson's fight, is that the mobility won't be great. The movement won't be great. I think I watched every George Foreman 2.0 fight. We all did. And with George, he had a great chin. Later, George, he was smarter than the guys he fought. He would wear them out. He delivered. He was really fairly immobile. I think Mike will be a little more mobile. I always thought Mike, his movement was pretty good when he trained. When he really had his best trainers, I thought his movement was really, really good. When Mike wasn't in shape or didn't train as well, he kind of lost his jab. He was like a Adam Dunn. A lot of home runs, a lot of strikeouts. There wasn't a lot of nuance to it. But I do think Mike, he'll have some limited mobility. Will it look? I have a feeling it'll look a little like George Foreman's later fights. You?
Could, because of his age. But George was just a much bigger man, much bigger physique, much taller, much wider, much everything, much more everything. And Mike's a smaller cage, smaller everything. I think Mike looks pretty good. When I went to watch him over in Las Vegas, he was training over at the Raiders facility. I went to watch him train, and it's impressive. He was also running sprints, so his movement looks pretty good. And it was slowed a little bit by the hospital visit, but he's come back now, and he looks terrific. We had him on the broadcast yesterday on the radio show with Belichick, and he took off his shirt. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it's hard to believe that, a 58-year-old guy can look like that. And so, I don't want to say, that just because he looks good. Bruce Selvin, was an unbelievable specimen.
Oh yeah.
And Frank Bruno was and then they came into the ring and they got clobbered.
I saw the Bruno Tyson fight. I was third row.
And look at that. Remember how he looked? He looked like he would beat up the world for the next 30 years.
And he did land one great punch to Mike that I was there. And Mike, for about a second, blacked out standing up. And then Mike acknowledged later, he goes, it felt like I got kicked by a blanking mule. The late great Nick Charles. I remember that bite.
Yeah. Wasn't it
But no,
great? Nick
no.
went into the Boxing Hall of Fame last summer. That was
Oh, it
fantastic.
is.
He was
Nick
great.
was
He
great.
did a lot for the sport. He was great, great announcer.
So, um, it is the largest known age gap for a fight. But my take on the fight is go to Kobe Bryant's last game or Brett Favre's last game or Brady's last game. I know Drew Bledsoe pretty well. If you gave Drew Bledsoe football right now and said, hit a flag pattern, he could absolutely do it. He wouldn't want to train. He wouldn't want to get hit. The legs are shot. But pro athletes, Jim, they've always got a moment left. They're just different than us. You could go get Rory McIlroy at 75 and say 280, give me your 3-wood, and he could hit it. He just wouldn't want the heat for 4 rounds, right? I think Mike is going to have moments that we're going to go, I like Mike in this fight. I do. How about you?
I'm not objective. Okay. I've been with Mike Tyson since he was 16, 17 years old. I've known him. We had a very professional relationship and did all of his fights and many, just tremendous interviews. I broke my back, spinal. I'm going to rip his heart out and feed it to him. Want to eat his children. Threatened to kill me one day in an interview post-fight. Colin, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to kill Don King. And then 30 seconds later, he kissed me on my cheek, and I'm still trying to figure out what was more disturbing. So,
Yeah.
I'm not objective here. I love Mike. When I got into the Boxing Hall of Fame, he came and did my induction. And so, I want to see Mike win. I want to see Mike do well. I want nothing but the best for Mike. And so do I think he can win? Yes. Do I hope he wins? Yes. My real hope is that he's not hurt and that he's able to perform well, give the fans what they want, and that everybody walks away, happy with what they've seen, and that Jake Paul, feels good about the opportunity that he gave to Mike to make a bunch of money at a point in his life where he probably didn't think any of this would be available, and that he's able to go on with his career and further the sport. That's my hope. Intellectually, I don't think anybody just walks into the ring and beats Mike Tyson. Emotionally, I'm nervous. I'm nervous for him.
But my favorite part, so my first job out of college was Vegas. And, most first jobs, you're doing AA baseball or minor league hockey. I think that was Bob Costas' first job. My first job was doing a 1 inning of play-by-play in Las Vegas for the Padres AAA affiliate. And then I got a job. Frank Belmont hired me to do some boxing stuff. HBO, international feed, and I did some local sportscasting. And so I was the luckiest guy in the world. I'm 24 years old. I'm in Vegas, and it was the fastest growing city. And I don't gamble. I'm a small town rural kid. And I followed Tyson, and I saw a couple of fights. Hagler Hearns live, the greatest fight I've ever been to. I saw. I just feel like it was a different life. But I will say this: Mike Tyson fights in his prime. It's the only sporting event I've gone to that makes me nervous.
Interesting.
Super Bowls don't, Final Fours don't. There was something about the energy of it that if you've never been to a big fight, and this will be a big fight, there is, of all the stuff you've covered, I always felt boxing felt different.
There's nothing like it. You're exactly right. On a fight of big magnitude, Ali Spinks, Hagler Hearns, Mayweather Pacquiao. Take it anywhere you want, wherever you want in any era. When those folks are walking into the ring and it's the 5 or 7 minutes before, and then the introductions are made by Jimmy Lennon Jr. or by Michael Buffer or by, back in the olden days, Jimmy's father. And so, there is nothing like it anywhere. The only thing that remotely compares to me, and I've been lucky enough to be at 14 of them, is the opening ceremony of the Olympics when the torch is lit. That's the only feeling of anticipation that compares to a big prize fight. And big prize fights happen a lot more than every 4 years. So once or twice a year, you get that feeling. And there's even like we had it for Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in their matches.
Oh, I went to that.
Yeah, well, when he came in that carriage and they're playing whatever the song was, it was pretty, there's nothing like this feeling and the
Yeah.
anticipation and everybody's standing up and they got their phones now and they're cheering and they're singing and it's pretty wild. And I think we're going to have that at Texas Stadium. I'm sure there'll be whatever 50,000 plus people in the stadium, which is a huge crowd. It's cavernous, so it's going to probably not have the same feeling of like the MGM, Grand Garden or T-Mobile, or a smaller venue, maybe perhaps outside at the we call it the Punch Bowl, the old StubHub Center down in Carson. But I think that feeling, Colin, that feeling is going to be there for this, just because hey, he's Mike Tyson, and it's getting so much publicity. They're advertising this on the NFL, on Fox, on NBC during the Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. Every time you turn on ESPN, they're running these ads, and Netflix, with all of these millions of subscribers, on a Friday night in the middle of the fall, I think November 15th. I don't know what college football it's up against, but I think that this fight is going to attract a tremendous amount of attention, and we just hope that that it's entertaining. And again, I just don't want to see Mike get hurt, or Jake. I don't want to see him get hurt either. Just want to see. Let's have some fun with this. I hope that that's the spirit that it's created in. I think that Mike is now at a point. He says that old Iron Mike will never be back. The guy who's vicious, mean, who has a screw loose, that he doesn't want to go back there. But he says, I don't have to be at that point internally to be able to beat this guy. So it's going to be interesting. What do you think? You think that there's going to be a huge audience for this?
Yeah, I think there's always an audience for a good fight. I think, I've told Dana White this. I grew up a fight fan, and I watched UFC for years, but I go to 2 or 3 or 4 UFC cards every summer when I have time, and there's nothing like it. The energy. I take friends, I've introduced cousins, and they come away and they're like, "Man, the energy is like nothing I've ever seen." I took my wife to Conor McGregor Mayweather. I said, and she loved it. So I've been so lucky in my life. And now I do more, opinion than actually reporting, right? We all know that. I've transitioned to more of an opinionist years ago. But if you told me I got 3 events a year, one of them would be a big fight. I saw 6 Pacquiao fights. I whenever I was near Vegas or in Vegas and he fought, I went to Pacquiao fights and got great seats and paid for them sometimes. I didn't care. I like these events. I'll be watching. I'm fascinated by it.
He was great to watch. I was lucky to broadcast a number of his fights on Showtime. Uh, Mayweather Pacquiao, Mayweather McGregor was on Showtime. So I know exactly what you're feeling. I'm lucky enough. The first interview I ever did was with Muhammad Ali by total accident. So, and then he took me under his wing and got to go and interview him on numerous occasions through the end of his career, and I got into boxing, and it's been a terrific professional existence, and I've loved every minute of it. And the fighters are unlike any other athletes, Colin, and it's not even close. They're in there by themselves. They put it all on the line of themselves. It's all dependent on them. Yes, they do have good trainers, and they do have good managers, and they do have good people around them. But at the end of the day, they're naked by themselves in there, wearing a pair of shorts with a couple of gloves on. And it's only up to them. They have to make their own adjustments on the fly. They have to, overcome all sorts of obstacles. And, it's always pretty interesting to me, the level of criticism that a fighter can take
Yeah.
for what it is their performance is in loss and in victory. It's astonishing to me, because there's not a person on the planet who's doing what we do or who's paying for a seat that could last in there for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Yet they have all of the answers outside of it, unlike all of us who've played football, basketball, or baseball growing up. You don't play boxing. You don't play boxing. You play boxing, you're going to end up with no teeth in the gutter on the street.
Mhm.
You don't play it. You better perfect it.